Welcome once again to EWTN's Bookmark. This is a special show with Tom and Glory Sullivan talking about the works of Father Aloysius Schwartz, who's a venerable. The two books are The Starved and the Silent, and also Killing Me Softly, both published by the Sisters of Mary. Welcome, Tom and Glory, to EWTN's Bookmark show.
Thank you.
And those who remember watching you back in March, I think it was, when you were on with Father Mitch on the live show talking about Father Al, and also the great work that Father Al really started that you've been great supporters of over the years. Let me ask you, Tom, first, where did you actually meet Father Al?
Well, we actually met him when he came to dinner at our home in Washington, D.C. What he did, he was serving in Korea as a missionary, and he set up a little fundraising operation. And through the fundraising operation, I read an article in the Washington newspaper, not the Post, no, the Evening Star.
I read that, so I knew it was a while ago.
Long time
I think most
ago.
people think the Evening Star is a name for Our Lady or something at this point. So.
No, but back in those days, people used to read the paper when they came home from work.
Right.
Now they read the paper when they go to work.
Right, exactly. While they're at work.
I didn't say that. But anyway, what happened was I read a little article about Father, and I saw this picture of the nuns playing soccer with some young boys, and I had personally experienced that. So I was attracted to read the article. I read the article and I thought, wow, that article really touched my heart about this priest taking in these young boys who were orphans from the streets of Korea. And so I told Gloria, I said, gee, would you read this article? Which she did. And she said, oh, that touched my heart too. And I said, wow, I said, that's really amazing. The Holy Spirit's really working on us. So we sent a small donation in, and after a couple of years, we got a call. They wanted to know who these people were that were sending in this little donations. And they said, would you like to meet Father when he comes home to visit? He'd come home every year for 2 weeks. And 1 week he made a retreat with the Trappists, and then the other week he would take care of seeing the family and looking in on the office that they had established, which is the World Youth for Villages. Okay, and in the United States.
Okay.
So, but basically, so would you like to meet him? We said, we'd love to meet him. So we got a call one night, or one day, and he would be in town on such and such, and so we invited him to come out for dinner. And
but he didn't want to sit in the dining room,
no,
right?
Glory will tell you the story.
Right.
No, it was really fun because I was so excited with Father Al. I mean, we'd read about him and knew about him, and I was so excited that he was coming to dinner at our house. So I wanted everything to be fancy. And the answer came back, no. Father Al doesn't want anything fancy. He wants to eat at your kitchen table with your children. And so I can remember what I fixed. I remember the evening very clearly. We had a wonderful, wonderful time at the table. And when we adjourned to the family room, the children didn't go upstairs to do their studies.
Really?
They sat at his feet
Well,
they were so interested in his stories about all of his children.
About these children. And normally our children at dinner, they would ask to be excused,
Got things to do.
Yeah,
got
I
things
got
to
things
do.
to do. I got it was always excuses. I got to go do my homework.
Right.
But anyway, they didn't, and they came in, and the three of them sat at his feet in the.
So did that have an
room.
impact on you? Not only seeing that for yourselves, but seeing the reaction your children had.
Yes.
But when Father was talking, you were captivated because these stories were totally amazing. You couldn't imagine that this priest could have hundreds and thousands of children in his care, the poorest of the poor. Who had ever heard a story like this?
Now, he's from Washington, D.C.,
yes.
right?
Well,
Born and raised,
yes.
and ordained there.
Right.
Well, yes, he was born and raised. He started out, he went to the seminary. In fact, this book, Starved and the Silent, the first chapter tells you his going to the local seminary in Baltimore.
Right.
And then from there he went to the Mary Knolls.
Right.
And then he decided that he wanted to be more into serving the poor.
That was really interesting because the idea, you would think at the time when we were growing up as kids in the 60s, everybody had those little Maryknoll
Yes.
Exactly.
books and little magazines that everybody had Maryknoll, right? You
Yes.
thought, well, Maryknoll's helping the poor people in China or things like that, and that was kind of the mindset we have. And he went there with the idea he wanted to really work with the poor, and he thought they weren't poor enough.
Exactly.
Well, what his situation was, now he was president of his class at the Maryknoll Seminary. He was always a leader. And being a leader, he took, I guess, the next step, and he said, gee, the Maryknoll go and they serve the poor in China, these various foreign countries. But they come home, okay?
I see.
They would go, like, military, they'd go for 2 or 3 or 4 years,
Okay.
and then they would come back home.
So like almost a deployment kind of period of time and then come back.
Yes, and what he wanted to do was he decided he wanted to make a total commitment to the poor. He wanted to go and actually live in a diocese, a foreign diocese.
Right.
And he, from his reading, learned that the poorest of the poor would be in Korea.
Right.
And so he asked the psalmist, well, first, I could take a step back. He went to Louvain to
In France,
do
right?
theology.
Right.
Okay. And
You have some pictures,
there-
actually, of one of the books
Yes.
with him.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
He had his beret on, I know.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes.
Right.
But what he did was, while in Louvain, he went to the shrine of Our Lady of the Poor, the Virgin of the Poor,
In Bano.
in Bano.
One
correct.
of the least known apparitions of Our Lady.
Exactly.
Yes, it is.
We
It
have
Happened
gone.
in the 30s it was, wasn't
We
it?
have
Yes,
gone.
it was in the
Right,
30s. Yeah, the blessed.
Bano and Barang, two of them came close to each other. Right.
Correct.
Yeah, right,
Correct. They're not too far apart.
Right, okay.
Okay. And we've been to both of them, but basically, as a seminarian, he would go visit the Virgin of the Poor shrine, and it's a Vatican-approved one. I mean, there's a lot of shrines around, but they're not all Vatican-approved.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Anyway, this is a Vatican-approved one, and he decided to dedicate his life to the Virgin of the Poor. And so he wanted to go serve the poorest of the poor, and he asked that that be his assignment. And so the Samist was the organization that he joined to obtain that type of a role.
Right.
And the Samists are headquartered in Belgium, okay, in Brussels. And so he was assigned to war-torn Korea.
Okay.
And he was assigned to Busan.
And what years was this then?
Well, this would have been 1957.
So your post-Korean conflict kind of period
Yes,
of time,
yes.
right?
And what had happened in Korea, I'm afraid I'm getting off of.
That's all right, but
Okay.
we're getting a background on Father
Oh, I'm
Al,
back.
which is reflective of this book.
Well, it is. It's here in the
this as
first
well.
chapter. He talks about the seminary, and then he talks about getting to Korea, and then the second chapter is about his first period of time in Korea, the first couple
Right,
of days.
because it's interesting, because people today would look and say Korea,
Oh, it's
or
Right.
it's booming. I mean, it's
It
one of
is
the big
now.
economies
Right.
Yes.
in there. And the question would be, how Catholic was Korea back when he was first working there?
Well, again, that's another chapter in this book. That's
Right.
this book is a fabulous book because each chapter tells a different story. And the story goes from his being in the seminary, his first couple of days in Busan, and what he saw there, what he experienced, and then it goes into the history of, you're
Right.
asking the logical questions that the book answers.
Right.
Because the third chapter is on the faith in Korea. The faith in Korea didn't start until 1800, and it was persecuted very dramatically by the Koreans. And then when the Japanese conquered Korea in 1901,
Right.
the Japanese continued the persecution.
Right.
So there was a very small Catholic population, and it didn't grow during the Civil War because of the terrible conflict. And the North Koreans overran South Korea.
Right, exactly.
We ran them back up to the Yalu. The Chinese came in and ran us back down.
Chosin Reservoir, famous
Yes,
battle. Right?
yes, famous battles.
Right.
But anyway, he tells the story about the beginning of the faith. So when he went there in 1957, they were able to do tremendous evangelization.
Because
yes, and bring the Catholic faith to the country.
Well, it's interesting. In the beginning here, he says, starved and silent, such is Christ upon the cross. Such too is the present condition of the people of Korea. It goes on to say, I have limited myself in this book to two things, the poor of Korea and the poverty of Christ. So he saw that connection.
Yes. He saw that Christ came to serve the poor. He saw that Christ didn't come and born at the Ritz. He was born in a stable, you know, with smelly animals and manure and all this. I mean, Christ came as a poor person. Christ came to serve the poor. And so Father Al saw his mission to serve the poor. Okay.
It says here, there's a striking similarity between the social and economic structure of Palestine in the time of Christ and that of Korea today. That's what he saw. And this was in the 60s?
This is in the 60s.
In the 60s,
he wrote this book in the 60s.
Right.
Okay.
He also says to a great...
This is his first book.
Right. He also said, to a great extent, one's surroundings conditions one's thinking. Just as day thinking differs from night thinking, so does rich thinking differ from poor thinking.
Exactly.
So how did you find that in the sense of, what did he mean by that? When you met him and talked to him, what did he mean by the rich thinking versus poor thinking?
Well, when we went to Korea the first time back in 1988, the country was progressing, but there was still some poverty. And for us to go from Washington, D.C. and the luxuries that we have here in the United States.
Which we take for granted, of course.
We do.
Right.
We take for granted. God, you're with it because you really have the feel for this, that you have to go and see how people live and survive on the dump. You know, it's unbelievable to have these experiences, and fortunately through Father Schwartz, you know, we've had a big awakening, so to speak, that we in the United States live so luxuriously that it's almost beyond us to imagine true poverty.
Right.
I mean, we don't have poverty in the United States.
Right.
Father Al used to make us go to the dump in Metro Manila when we were leaving Manila. We said, Father, no, we don't want to go back to the dump. We've been there before. And he would tell the sisters, take them to the dump. It was a traumatic experience to visit the dump because there were thousands of families living on the dump trying to eke out daily food. It was just, it was horrific.
To experience people who are starving to death.
Right.
It's a shock.
Well, he talks about that a little bit about St. Paul and the Damascus Road, and talks about the idea that a Christian who comes into contact with Christ in the person of the poor and then discovers Christ's face in the face of the starved and the silent will be marked and haunted by this vision of life, which was what he was trying to get across to you, right?
He did. It got across.
Right.
It got across.
Jaw-dropping.
Yes.
Also,
that's why we try to invite the people with whom we encounter to come see.
Right. And in fact, you invited Peter Gagnon and Michael Warsos and our crew to go and create a wonderful documentary that we're airing on EWTN.
Yes. That the EWTN has done the world a great service by this initiative to go down to see what the poor are really experiencing, to interview these children.
But they didn't go to Korea. They went to Mexico. Why did they end up in Mexico?
It's closer. Oh, that's part of my story.
Well, that's your story.
She gets that. I'm only on starving and silent.
Okay, you're stuck in Korea. She's taking care of Mexico. So do you get to the Philippines at all, or is that later too?
Well, what happened was we went first. The first visit was to Korea and to the Philippines, because what Father Al experienced was Korea, as you suggested earlier, has really evolved into this awesome economic power. I mean, it's just so impressive what's happened there, so that the program in Korea has decreased.
Right. Okay? The need for it, effectively.
Well, effectively, there's not the need that there was in 1957.
Right.
But the need was over in the Philippines. And then from the Philippines, the people in Mexico asked Father to bring the program there because of their poverty. and they have a lot of poverty there. You may not see it in Mexico City, but you get out of the city into the villages and the mountains and that, and you really experience it out there. And then to go from Mexico, they were invited by the president of Guatemala to come to Guatemala. Well, really, him and the First Lady. And I think the First Lady was pulling the strings on, on a number of these things.
It's been known to happen in marriages and relationships.
Yes,
I've heard telltale stories about that.
I've heard that too.
Oh no.
So that's The Starved and the Silent, dramatic encounter of the American priest with Christ's poor in Korea.
Oh, it's a great book because each chapter tells an interesting story with spiritual themes in it.
Right, exactly.
And so the spirituality permeates the whole book. It's inspiring. He provides practical spiritual guidance. I mean, this is not some theoretical, theological treatise. This is a very practical book. The author, Father Schwartz, is a very gifted writer. Okay, people will enjoy reading his practical and timely spiritual guidance. And the other thing, having been in the publishing business, it's only about 200 pages.
Okay. And so it's a quick read.
Well, to me it is. And he uses good-sized type so that
I have to admit, you're very good at selling books. So you're helping us out here. But I also want to get to your lovely bride here, Glory. So she gets to talk about the book, Killing Me Softly, the inspiring story of the champion of the poor, which is kind of bookends his life, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay. Tom talked about Father's first book, and I'm going to talk about the last book that he wrote. In fact, he finished this book 9 days before he passed away, so it's very, very...
Right, and he did it, but he dictated, right?
He did,
right,
because he couldn't move his arms and legs at that point in time.
And actually it was...
voice-activated tape recorders.
We gave him voice-activated tape recorders so that he could lay there with ALS and talk.
But then he would ship the tapes to the United States to have them transcribed?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
Yes.
Anyway, this book is dedicated, as you may imagine, to Our Lady of Banno, Belgium, the Virgin of the Poor, and to his beautiful Sisters of Mary. Today they have 390 sisters that actually have...
Yeah, and the sister in charge was on the live show with Father Mitch, right?
Yes, one of them, right.
One of the general counselors.
Right.
But the Mother Superior was in the video
from Mexico
of the program itself.
Unfinished Symphony. She's in there throughout.
You can't help but fall in love with Sister Margie.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let me ask you that question, because why isn't an unfinished symphony?
Well, because in chapter, I think it's 7 of this book, well, the whole book is written about what Father really wanted to tell us about in the last days of his life. He wrote it mainly for the Sisters of Mary. He wrote it as a prayer book. He prayed to God to please relieve him of the sufferings that he was experiencing with Lou Gehrig's disease. And he outlined a plan for the Sisters of Mary as you read through this book. He gave them advice on the countries that they should go to and the places that he wanted them to serve. And he appointed Sister Mother Michaela Kim as the head of the Sisters of Mary after he was to pass away. It's just a fabulous book. And he goes through the agony and the ecstasy of the decisions that he's going to make. And the Unfinished Symphony basically is his decision to go or not to go to Mexico.
Okay.
And we know that he went.
He went. Yes. And of course, as you alluded to the fact that he had ALS, better known as Lou Gehrig's disease.
Correct.
And like I said, as a good Yankee fan, in reading his book, I thought he very much has a lot in common with the Iron Horse.
Yes, he did.
Oh, he did.
From the Yankees, in the sense of, and you have pictures of him with, where he was severely debilitated, and you can see he's still leading the charge.
We were with Father Al in November before he died, the following March, and he was vesting to go to say Mass for us down in Chalco, Mexico, and he handed me 3 or 4 chapters of this book that he was in the process of writing, and he said, "Hey, read this and tell me what you think of it." Well, I sat there and cried. I couldn't believe what he had written, because he really expressed the suffering that he was encountering and compared that to the passion and death of our Lord. He's a very spiritual man, a very holy man, and expected a lot of everyone that he knew.
Right.
really
that
did.
seems typical of those
Yes.
holy people.
It's true.
Mother Angelica, Mother Teresa. You hear these people
Yes.
that they're on a mission, and they expect a lot of those who are there to support them. Let me ask you one thing. In knowing Father Al, what is it about him growing up, besides later on in life? Was there something in his early life that always made him feel like he wanted to be a priest who worked with the poor?
We are told that from the earliest of his days, he had a vocation to be a priest. He always knew he wanted to be a priest.
Okay.
But I don't think then he knew where he was going to end up.
Until
But
kind
he
of that.
truly had a heart for the poor.
Right.
I mean, as you have stated, the Marinos were a little bit too rich for
Right
him.
for him.
So,
Now, Killing Me Softly with his song was a Roberta Flack
Yes.
song that was, I think, came out in '73,
Yes.
as I recall,
Okay.
spring of '73. And so, but that wasn't the version he was familiar with.
No,
right?
no.
Uh,
I think he called,
Well,
it was a version of Andy Williams was the singer, or something like
Right,
that. I
yeah,
can't
yeah.
remember the exact words from the book, but
yeah, he had his
it
name
was funny.
backwards or something.
Right,
Yeah.
and the sisters couldn't bail him out. They didn't know what it was either.
Yeah, couldn't
so.
figure out what he was talking
No,
about.
exactly.
And why did he like that song? What was his connection? Why did he connect
Well,
to
because ALS does kill you softly. It's a vicious, vicious disease that disables you a little bit at a time. And Father Al's description of Lou Gehrig's disease and Killing Me Softly is very drawn out and very explicit. And you begin
Right.
to understand the suffering and the pain that he went through. And all of this was for the greater honor and
Right.
glory of God and for the enrichment of the sisters. They watched him suffer through this.
He thought William Andrews was the singer.
That's it.
Then they thought it was Andy Williams, and they realized he was talking about Perry Como's version of it. Okay. So a good Catholic man, Perry Como there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He also said Geronimo, this I thought is probably indicative of Father Al, which is why it's chapter 1, Crossing the River. Geronimo, the famous Indian chief, would have said, the way to cross a river is to cross it.
Exactly. And boy, that's so true, Father Al. But he did agonize about the decision to go to Mexico. It took him 3 visits by air, which alone,
Why was he reticent about going?
because he knew he was dying with Lou Gehrig's
Yeah, he knew he was
disease.
going to be
He didn't
dead.
know if he'd have
Well,
what it would take to make it happen.
Well,
Well,
that's the unfinished symphony, because
That
he
is.
knew he was going to die.
Right.
He
Right.
wouldn't be able to finish it. And should he go ahead and leave his symphony to be finished by
Sisters.
the sisters? Should he burden them with going to a new culture, a new country, and all that? So that was the unfinished symphony.
But Father Al never made a decision, a major decision, without consulting the sisters. And of course, he had consulted the sisters about Mexico. And they said to him, Father, wherever you go, we will follow. And not only that have they followed, but they've continued to do this magnificent
Right.
work. And when Father died, there were about 10,000 children in the program. Today, there are 22,500 children in this program throughout the 7 countries of the world.
And are they all this kind of boys' town, girls' town?
Yes.
I
Yes.
think that's
Yes.
the kind of the model. And is
Exactly.
the idea to take impoverished children or orphans and give them some sort of education so they can have a life, or what exactly is the goal?
Okay. Father Al had a definite model that the sisters followed, and he followed. The sisters would only take 1 child from a family of the poorest of the poor. And the reason that happened, that they established it that way, was so that this child could be trained to be the advocate to their
I
families
see.
and to evangelize those families. The children were taught never to be superior to their families for the benefit that they had been given of an education, but to go back and work with their families and to bring them to the faith. And these children not only graduated from the Sisters of Mary, but they got jobs on the economy. And the money that these children earn has gone back to their brothers and sisters to help them go to school and to help their parents move into better living quarters. It's a miracle in action
So
every
in
day.
that sense of giving a leg up so that they can then give a hand down to pull up
Exactly.
their family.
Exactly.
It
yes.
works.
But now, not all these children have a family in
Right.
our sense of a family. Many of the children are living with an aunt or an uncle because the parents aren't available, or a grandmother or something of that nature.
Right,
But
exactly.
that child is taught that that is their mission. This is not social work.
No.
That's the thing that just struck me in what you said, and certainly in reading Father Al's dedication, that idea of, you said, evangelization.
Right.
Because so many times people's concerns, and Catholics are concerned in the sense of, I want to help the poor, but I'd like to do it through a Catholic organization, but I'd like to feel that there's some Catholic aspect of it that the faith is being carried on and is part of what is happening at the mission.
Well, let us tell you what the sisters do. The first gift that the children are given when they come to the Sisters of Mary is a Bible. And those children's names are inscribed in that Bible. When they graduate, that Bible goes with them for their lives.
Okay. Well, very good. Unfortunately, this is only a half an hour show as opposed to an hour show. So we're out of time, and we thank you so much, Tom and Glory Sullivan. Tom talking about The Starved and the Silent by Father Aloysius Schwartz, who's also a venerable now, and Killing Me Softly, the inspiring story of a champion of the poor. He certainly was, and he wasn't shy about it. Thank you for people like yourself stepping forward and telling his story and letting more people know about him and the great work the sisters are doing. And people can go to the website to find out more how they can support these boys and girls' towns. And I'm Doug Keck, and this has been, of course, an EWTN Bookmark. We'll see you next time. Thanks.